Hi, everyone. This is Bob Dietrich. Welcome back to the ADHD Toolbox. And we are excited because we're going to be talking about something interesting, something we haven't talked about before and you probably haven't heard much about. And that is how the athletic mindset can be used to help overcome ADHD challenges. The athletic mindset, as you know, can be very powerful through visualization and being focused and all sorts of other things. And it helps some of these athletes become superstars, and we're going to learn about how you can use that mindset, acquire that mindset, and use it to help you or your child or your student overcome ADHD. And I have Sarah Cheyette here. Cheyette. I'm sorry, I said it. Cheyette. I said it wrong. Then you told me how to say it, but you know what? That's just me and my ADHD probably.
That's okay.
So welcome to our program, and I'm excited because, anybody can use this, right? This talk is really for anybody, but it's especially helpful for people with ADHD.
Absolutely. This talk is going to be about what helps everybody focus, and people with ADHD need that more than other people who may focus more naturally. But the same techniques that I'm going to talk to you about are the same techniques that I use and many people use to focus.
Got it. Well, this winning mindset, as we'll call it, is exciting to me. But let's tell our viewers a little bit about who you are and your practice and things like that, so we can get accustomed to who you are before we jump into the content.
Sure. My name is Sarah Cheyette, and I'm a physician. I'm a pediatric neurologist, so I take care of kids with neurologic conditions, but also adults with ADHD. I started seeing the parents when it became evident that what I was doing for the kids was helping the kids, and the parents started coming in.
Right.
Um, and so I do a lot of work with people of all ages with ADHD. I
Mhm.
have a practice in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I've written 2 books about ADHD. The first one is ADHD and the Focused Mind, and that's the one that we're really focusing on today with the athletic mindset.
Mhm.
And the second one was Winning with ADHD. And so I have co-authors on both books. For ADHD and the Focused Mind, my husband is a psychiatrist and he's a co-author, but it was also written with our kids' karate teacher so that you can really get the athletic perspective from an athlete.
Yeah.
And the second book, Winning with ADHD, is written with a girl who has ADHD herself, and she's now in her 20s, and she wanted to give a roadmap to people coming up through middle school and high school.
Wonderful. Awesome. Well, this is going to be an exciting talk. So let's jump right in, and I guess let's talk about maybe explain a little bit about what the best way you found is to explain ADHD.
Well, I think to understand ADHD, you have to understand what focusing is. And focusing means paying attention to one thing and not paying attention to other things.
Mhm.
So right now, I'm focusing on you and I'm not thinking about other things that I could be thinking of, like I kind of got to clean this desk up and what I'm going to do after I finish talking with you. So when I'm focusing, I've got one thing that's important and the other thing's less important. When I'm not focusing, I've got one thing that leads to another, that leads to another. My brain sees lots of things that are all interesting, and it jumps from one thing to the other. So everybody focuses sometimes, right? And
Mhm.
everybody's not focused sometimes. The best way I think of ADHD is when you're in the not focused state too much of the time, enough so that it causes problems for the person, enough so that other people notice and they notice. So ADHD does not mean that you can't focus. It means that you're in the not focused state way too much of the time.
Got it. Okay. I've talked to some other experts, and they talk about ADHD not being so much a focus area, but an interest area, right? Like when people are really interested, then they're focused, and when they're not interested, they're not focused. What do you have to say about that?
Well, we are all bouncing around between focus sometimes and not focus sometimes. Everybody is like that.
Right.
And everybody focuses more when they're interested in something. Everybody focuses more when they want to do something. They have ownership of the thing. They feel confident about the thing. They see the point in doing that thing. So those are all things that help most of us, well, they help all of us focus better.
Mhm.
And we all focus worse if we are tired, if we're in a bad mood, if we're worried, if we're like, gosh, I don't want to do that really. They're making me do that.
Mhm.
I don't like my boss. I don't like my teacher, whatever it is. All those negative feelings put us into a less focused mode.
Right.
So I think that the same things will influence people with ADHD and people without ADHD. It's just a matter of degree. So, if a lot of us can sort of automatically focus if we're in the right situation, but somebody with ADHD may have to push themselves to focus even if they're not that interested.
Got it. Got it. Okay. So your first book, The Focused Mind, was about the athletic mindset. So what does that have to do with ADHD? How do you make that connection?
Well, the athletic mindset really has to do with how athletes, especially the great athletes, get themselves into a zone
Mhm.
so that their whole self is focused and working on accomplishing one thing.
Mhm.
And there are kids and adults who do this very naturally in settings like a soccer team or when they're playing their sport. They
Right.
might turn into the most focused people ever. But then in their work or in their school or at home, they have a hard time focusing. So the question is, well, they are the same person, aren't they? So how do we take what they do more naturally in their athletic endeavors and turn that into success in a non-athletic field? It's the same kinds of things that they just do it more naturally in one setting as compared to the other. And once you point out that they can do these things, sometimes it becomes a lot easier for them to do it in the setting where the focus doesn't naturally uh, snap to.
Got it. Got it. So let's take, like Michael Jordan, for example. I'm aging myself now. Okay, LeBron James. Let's go with that. Or Kobe Bryant. What a great example he is.
Yeah.
You'd hear stories of him on the court, hour after hour. I mean, even after games where he lost, I remember one story where he would jump back in the court after a game if he lost because some guy kept, nudging him with his arm instead of complaining to the officials about him. He practiced, actually, I think it was an elbow to the rib. So he kept, getting this elbow to the rib. So he had his trainer come out with a broom handle and poke him in the ribs every time he did a shot. And he did this for like 2 hours after a game that he already played to get focused. And, you know,
Yeah.
he- he-
And, since I'm in the Bay Area, we have to add Steph Curry to that list of notables that you said, and all of them had something in common.
Mhm.
They realized that it was going to take hard work. And that is one of the things that, as a parent or if you're going to try to coach somebody into their best performance, the person you're coaching, your child, whoever it is, has to sort of come to terms with the fact that hard work is part of this. So if they're secretly not wanting to do the work, that makes them less focused.
Mhm.
If they go, yeah, okay, this is what it's going to take, and I'm going to do that, they're a lot more likely to focus without the kind of fear of, oh my gosh, it's too much work getting in the way. That's something that it's funny. I've been seeing a lot of 15-year-old boys coming into my office this week, and one of them fairly danced into there, showing me his report card, which was all A's. And
Wow.
this was a kid who had been getting D's and F's the year before. And I said to him, wow, that took a lot of hard work. And he said, yes, it did. I did it all. I'm really proud of myself. And I said, but you've spent the last 14 years trying to avoid the work. And he laughed and he said, I guess I figured out that hard work actually feels good. And to continue the sports metaphor, Um, if you beat a easy team, doesn't feel so good. I mean, it's fine, you won and all that, but beating the hard team is really where the reward comes in, isn't it?
Yeah, totally, totally. So, what did you do to get him to transform like that? I mean, that's a big transformation in just a year, going from F's to A's. What were some of the big keys?
Well, one of the biggest keys, and this is one I think that is not talked about, is getting him to take responsibility and accept that he needs to do stuff and he needs to do something differently than he had before. He was a kid who had a lot of, there was a lot of passivity. Everyone had been telling him to do this, do this, do this, do this all through middle school.
Mm.
He didn't really want to do it, but all the time it was, you need to do this and you need to do that. The kid was 14 years old going into high school, and we had a discussion about what does he want, you know and I think having a discussion about, does he really want to win the game, or does he just want to kind of see what happens? In any situation, there are different choices. One choice that people have is to play to win, and that's what the great basketball players that you named did. They didn't want to play just to not lose. That's another choice, right? You want to just do the job you have just to get by. And some people come to my office with a just get by mindset. I ask them, what do they want from high school or college or wherever they are in their lives, and they say, just to pass.
Mm,
That's choice number two, which is
mm.
playing to not lose.
Right.
You can also choose not to play. You don't have to. You could decide not to do that activity, that project, that whatever it is that you're doing. That's a third choice. And the final choice is to just play for fun, which is a very valid choice in many situations. So, there's times when it's fine just to horse around, enjoy the class, take the B, take the C. You're just doing it because you want to do it, and that's fine. So, having a discussion about which attitude he wanted to bring to school and putting it in the context of something he understood, because he was a student athlete, was, are you playing to win? Are you going to, take no prisoners? Are you going to put everything you have into this? Or are you just going to show up? And when he started to think about that in the athletic context and realize he has that choice, I can't say that made him turn around, but at least that was the first step.
Got it. So in your book, when you talk about, playing to win or not, is that what you're talking about? Is the specific?
Yeah. I want people to be honest with themselves.
Mm.
I don't want them to tell me they're playing to win when they're really just sort of barely showing up. And I want them to know what the difference is. You bring different skills and you bring a different mindset to the table if you decide you're going for it. If you decide, I'll just see what happens, that's a different level. And I just want people to be very honest with themselves, which level they're at.
Okay, well, so I have two questions for you, and these are really good questions for, I think, for some of our viewers, especially with the smaller children. So, the first question is, at what age can you start having this kind of conversation with them about, winning, playing to win or not, or the winning mindset, the athlete's mindset? What's a good age to start that?
I, I I think if you can start having these conversations
Mhm,
around the ages of 6 and 7,
mhm.
the words you use are, they may be simpler words, but the idea is the same. So instead of telling your 7-year-old, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this, you could sort of say, okay, here's the issue. Dinner time is at 7 and you need to get 3 things done. How are you going to do it? Are you going to, um, which order do you want to do that? And giving your kids some choice and some say in the process, and letting them do some of the problem solving is good. So, back to the playing to win part. Oh, wow. You left like 5 minutes for this. Do you really want to do a good job on that, or do you really want to just get through it and kind of seeing where they are? And some of the things you might go, okay, I get that. Sometimes you got to push your kids a little bit. I'm not saying don't push them a little bit, but I'm saying try to let them um, have some decision making experience before they get into their teenage years.
Right, and that was my second question. So you answered it, which was basically, how do you have that conversation with your child? And I think what you're saying is to ask them how they're going to get things done, letting them know you got to get this done. You got these things to do, like your homework or cleaning your room or both or whatever. And then so how are you going to do that? And then asking them to create the solutions for that. Is that right?
That's exactly right. So you're trying to build a problem solver. You're trying to build somebody who can look at 6 things and decide how to solve them. Some kids are going to be excellent at that starting off, and some kids are not going to be so good at that starting off.
Mhm.
But if they are always in the being told what to do situation, they really don't have so much responsibility, and they tune out naturally because like people are just going to tell them to do it anyways. So I think that if you want to build a kid who can solve problems, you really have to get them started earlier and give them some respect in terms of um, their solutions. It may not be your solution, but at least you can help them work through their solution. The other thing, again, is being mindful of how do you help your kid, that feeling when you get overwhelmed, when you have so much to do and it seems hard, to build persistence and not walk away from that. Because if I had to pick the one thing that separates my successful teenagers from the less successful teenagers, is that the ones who are successful have figured out a way that when they look at hard things, they kind of dive right after them and they start thinking about how they're going to solve the problem. How are they going to get it done? The ones who are less successful are like, wow, that's hard. I think I'm going to go do something else. I think I'm going to go on Instagram or whatever they're going to do. So I think, from an early age, when your child sees something hard, saying, wow, I know that looks hard. How are you going to start it? What's the first thing you're going to do?
Break it down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's really hard to start something. We all have that problem. But, kind of developing that skill in your child from an early age is really key. Not that they can't learn it later, but they have a lot of unlearning to do.
Mhm.
And, sports can be really helpful for that, or piano, or anything else where it's a task where it's like, whoa, that is really hard.
Yeah.
And here's the first thing I'm going to do to figure that out.
Yeah, that's great. And one of the things I've learned from someone I'm coaching with is that overwhelm can occur when you have a task that is labeled, like for example, for kids, clean their room. For me, maybe building this the ADHD toolbox, right?
Hmm.
Huge task, lots of little details. But if you just focus on the step you're in, the one step, I'm going to pick up my clothes and put it
Right,
right, and that's not overwhelming. I can get that done.
right,
And
right,
right, and so it takes them out of overwhelm, gives them a sense of accomplishment, right, which builds
right,
dopamine, right,
right.
and helps them gain momentum and move forward.
Right. So instead of do your homework, and the kid's like, I don't want to do my homework. I hate my homework, blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay, how are you going to get it done? I'm not going to get it done, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So the point of homework is not really can you get it done, but can you do it without like vomiting or whatever and, having a fit? That's the first part of homework. So you might practice just walking over to the homework table. Can you do that much?
Right, right.
Okay. Next week's lesson might be, can you do that and then put your name on the page.
Right.
Can you figure
Awesome.
out how to do the first problem? So
Yeah. You just read the first problem.
can you read the first problem? You don't have to do it, but as long as you can just read the problem, we're going to call that today's victory.
Right. Right.
And
Micro steps.
yeah, and speaking about victories, it's really important. You know, you see the athletes on the sidelines giving each other's high fives, right? They make a basket and they come back and they get the shimmy and they get the congratulations from their teammates.
Mm-hmm.
Without that kind of um, celebration, it's just run to one side of the court, make a basket, run to the other side of the court, make a basket, run to the other side of the court, make a basket. Like, that's not so fun for people. So if you can get your kid to just walk to the homework table without having a fit, not that you have to throw them a party, but have some sort of celebration, like a mental high five, a physical high five, a great job. That was your homework for the day. How does it feel to be done? Because that feeling is what carries us all through the work. It keeps us all going when things are tough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Great stuff. So, I know that, and moving forward with the conversation, I know that we as adults, I know I see so many adults working, and they're like lone rangers, right? They do it all themselves, and they don't ask for help. And I know a lot of times kids need help with their homework. They'll sit there and they'll struggle, and they won't ask for help. What's the best way to get kids to ask for help when they seem to be struggling, or they maybe can't do it on their own, or they do it better with some tutoring or whatever?
Yeah, that's a tough one. And again, if your child is part of a team, you can kind of remind them that they have a team around them. If your child is not part of a formal team, you can also kind of use the same metaphor. But it's sort of like, you've got your coaches, you've got your teammates, and you've got people around who you ask for help from every day on your team. What is so different about this situation? That's sometimes a very helpful approach if you have a kid who is refusing to go to therapy for whatever problem they're going to therapy for. I
Hmm.
hate therapists. I hate all therapists. I hate all therapists who ever lived. They're all stupid, all this stuff they'll say. And it's like, oh, yeah, how is that different from your soccer coach? And they're like, yeah, I don't know. And, you point to LeBron James, and he's got the, offensive coach, the defensive coach, the nutritionist, the trainers, and all the people on his team. None of us can do it on their own. So in my book, we talk about how the kid can find their team. And when they feel that they're not alone, oftentimes they're much better at utilizing the members of their team. Um, it can be a very isolating type of issue. So they hear way more negatives,
Right.
than positives growing up. And if you don't believe that you can do better, that's another obstacle to asking for help, right? Like, what's the point? You're not going to ask for help.
Awesome. And so, which book do you talk? Is that the Focus Mind where you talk about that?
Yeah, that's the book that really focuses on the athletic mindset and how to get your child's best performance out of them. However, it's one of those things where it's also applicable for adults. So the adults who have read the book have said, yeah, that's really helpful for me, even if they're not athletes. But
Mhm.
we've all tried to give a best performance in something at some point. And
Right.
how do you utilize that?
Awesome. Is that your question for me?
Well, it was a bit rhetorical, but, just sort of saying, when you pull things together and, how do you do it? And if you can use those same techniques in your work life, in your school life, in your home life, it's helpful.
Yeah.
Setting goals.
Yeah.
Athletes need to set goals. They need to have the goals be appropriate. They need to have them be realistic. If they're all of a sudden trying to lift, 500 pounds at once, then that is an unrealistic goal and it won't get them in shape. It'll get them a broken back.
Right.
So, kids need help setting goals as well. And they need to kind of uh, know what's important to them and
Mhm.
what's not important to them and come up with a realistic plan to get there. In other words, to circle back to what I said before, goal setting improves focused thinking by helping you prioritize one thing above all the other things that you could be thinking of.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And they need structure. They need reward systems in place. I know recognition, and I do a lot of work with Toastmasters, and recognition is a huge piece of helping people move forward. So all sorts of different tactics that you can use to help them, get focused and get motivated and get through it. Um, so that's the focused mind. So if you're looking for solutions and you want to go deeper with that, make sure you get the focused mind um, by Sarah Cheyette. Now,
ADHD and the
I,
Focused Mind by
I will
Sarah Cheyette. Yes.
and then last thing is, and this may be the biggest question, because it's like, what happens when everything falls apart?
Oh, yeah.
And that's not even a question coming from me. You're telling me this is a good question to ask, because that things fall apart and sometimes
Yeah.
they fall apart. So what do you do?
Yeah. So just like an athlete can't give up at halftime if they're losing,
Uh-huh.
a child who's in trouble or an adult who's not performing well has to see beyond that in order to visualize some victory for themselves. So, how do you get them to do that? One is having a coach is helpful, and one of the reasons to have the coach is for the coach to remind the person what is possible.
Right.
Like, remember that other game where you came from 30 points behind?
Hmm.
I'm sure that uh, there was that Super Bowl a few years ago where the Patriots came back and Tom Brady came back and beat Atlanta after being 25 points behind at halftime. Guess what? The halftime score didn't matter. You still have potential. You still have time to do that. And his coach may have reminded him of that, or he may have been in a shape where he could remind himself. So being able to visualize the goal and move towards it, being able to do that in a way that's not super emotional is really, really helpful. So, those feelings of failure and I can't do it, those feelings get in the way of focus. So if you're in a negative mind frame, it worsens focus, and then you have a bad outcome, and that bad outcome gives you more negative feelings
Hmm.
because you're just validating, see, I can't do it, I always screw up.
Hmm.
And then you have another bad outcome, and you wind up kind of circling the drain lower and lower. What's the point of focusing? I mean, what's the point of focusing anyways? When you focus, you have a good outcome. And then people go, "You are awesome." And you go, "Yes, I am awesome." And then you wind up with a good outcome and then more good feelings. So um, when you find yourself starting to fail, you have to kind of remember that circling the drain is the next step unless you can pull yourself out of it.
Yeah, awesome. What great tips that you've given us today. And if you want more, make sure you look up Sarah's book, ADHD and the Focused Mind. We will have a link to Sarah's website down below, as
Yep.
well as an email address. So you can email Sarah if you have any questions about this interview. Sarah, thank you so much for being here. And you have a free gift for us too. What's that free gift?
Yes, the free gift will have some tips and tricks for non-medication strategies to win with ADHD. So I hope you enjoy it, and you can always check us all out at sarahcheyette.com.
Fantastic. And we'll have a link for Sarah's website down below. I'm not going to say it again because But hey, thank you so much for being here. This has been fantastic and awesome information. And knowing that we can go to your website and just get even more, and your book as well, is a great resource. And the athletic mindset, what a great way to battle ADHD, because you're setting them up to win. And what we know about ADHD is that there is a brilliant creative side ADHD. There's this brilliant creative mind inside there. And when you manage it, maybe even through these winning strategies, you can access that. And so thank you for creating this, and thank you for being on our program today.
Thanks for having me. Have a wonderful day.
You too. And thank you all for watching this episode of the ADHD Toolbox. We will see you on the next episode.